When you think of a business, it's easy to picture a pyramid, right? With some big boss sitting at the very top. But what if I told you that's not the whole story? It's much more like a living, breathing ecosystem, a tangled web of relationships, where everyone, from the founder to the customer, plays a part. So, in this complex web, who's really pulling the strings? Let's get into it. Okay, so picture this. A company is about to launch a huge new product, or maybe it's thinking about closing a few locations. Who actually gets a voice in that room? Now, your first instinct is probably to say, well, the CEO, of course, but the reality is way more complicated, and honestly way more interesting than that. The answer lies with a whole group of people we call stakeholders. So what exactly is a stakeholder? Well, pretty simply, it's anyone who has a stake in the business, anyone who's affected by what it does. And right off the bat, you need to know they fall into two main camps. You've got your internal stakeholders, the folks on the inside, and then your external stakeholders, who are on the outside looking in, but are still a huge part of the story.
All right, Section 1, the insiders and outsiders. Let's meet the key players in this business ecosystem, and we'll start with the people inside the building.
First up, the entrepreneur. This is the spark, the person with the big idea, the one who takes all the risks to get this thing off the ground. They are the vision, the leadership, and they're driven by things like profit, sure, but also by control and that incredible feeling of building something from nothing. They are the absolute core of the business. I mean, to see this in action, just look at someone like Shane Curran. At 19 years old, he had the vision, and let's be honest, the guts, to go out and get millions in funding for his idea. That right there is the entrepreneurial spirit, taking a massive leap of faith for a potentially massive reward. But an idea is just an idea without the next group, the employees. These are the people who actually bring that vision to life. They're the ones on the ground using their skills every single day to make the business run. Without them, nothing gets done. And what do they want? It's pretty fundamental, right? A fair wage, a good place to work, and to be treated with respect. Think about it in the simplest way possible. A busy shop completely relies on its staff. If they're well-trained and happy to be there, customers have a great experience, and the business does well. If they're not, well, you've seen what happens. The whole thing can fall apart fast. Okay, let's step outside the business and look at the external players. And we've got to start with the most important one. Consumers. They're the lifeblood. Their wallets drive all the revenue. And today, more than ever, their online reviews and feedback can literally build up or tear down a company's reputation. And this is where you can see how powerful consumer values really are. Take a company like Patagonia. Their customers aren't just buying a fleece jacket. They're buying into a whole set of beliefs about the environment and ethics. They're willing to pay more because their values line up with the company's, and that gives them a huge influence. Another absolutely critical external link is the supplier. I mean, these are the folks who provide everything a business needs to make its products or deliver its services. A company is only as good as the parts it's made of, right? So a reliable supplier is everything. And what do they need? It's simple. Get paid on time and have some stability with long-term work. And this is a brilliant illustration of that dependency. McDonald's in Ireland makes a huge deal about sourcing its beef from Irish farms. That's not just a supply chain, that's a genuine partnership. The success of McDonald's is directly tied to the success and the reliability of those local farmers. Okay, Section 2, cooperation versus competition. So now that we've met all the different players in our ecosystem, the big question is, how do they get along? Because it's not always a happy family. Sometimes they work together beautifully, but a lot of the time their goals clash, and that's when you get conflict. So on one hand, you've got what we call a cooperative or a win-win relationship. Think about it. An employer invests in training an employee. What happens? The employee gets valuable new skills, and the business gets a more productive, more effective worker. Everybody wins. But on the flip side, you get the competitive win-lose situation. The company wants to cut costs, so they want to lower pay. The employees obviously want a raise. One side's gain is the other's loss. So that brings us to Section 3, how to resolve conflict. When those win-lose situations pop up, how do you stop the whole ecosystem from falling apart? Well, smart businesses have a playbook for this. They have a clear set of tools for restoring balance. And make no mistake, the stakes can be incredibly high. Just look at what happened with the Aer Lingus pilot strike in 2024 over pay. A conflict between just two stakeholder groups, the company and its employees, spiraled out of control. It ended up canceling hundreds of flights and wrecking the plans of thousands of customers. This is exactly why a resolution process is so vital. So here's the ladder that businesses climb to sort things out. It almost always starts with the simplest step. Just meet and talk. An informal chat to see if there's any common ground. If that goes nowhere, you level up to formal negotiation, where both sides really start bargaining to find a compromise. Still stuck? That's when you call in a neutral outsider. With mediation, they help the two sides talk it out. With conciliation, that third party can actually suggest a solution. But, and this is key, it's not binding. No one has to accept it. The final, most serious step is arbitration. Here, both sides agree beforehand that they will accept whatever the independent party decides. It's a legally binding decision. It really is the last resort to bring things back to normal.
Which brings us to our last section, mapping who matters most. See, with so many different people wanting so many different things, a good business can't just react to problems as they happen. It has to be proactive. And to do that, you need a strategic map to figure out who you really need to listen to.
And that process is called stakeholder mapping. It's actually a pretty logical four-step process. First, you identify every single person or group with a stake. Then, you analyze them based on two really simple but powerful questions. How much interest do they have in this decision? And how much power do they have to influence it? Once you know that, you map them on a grid, which finally lets you plan exactly how you're going to deal with each group.
Let's make this real. Imagine AIB is planning to close some of its rural branches. The customers in the local community, they have super high interest. It affects them directly. But they have pretty low power to actually stop it. The government? Surprisingly, they have low interest and low power in this case. But what about the employees? Their jobs are on the line, so they have high interest and they have high power because they can organize through unions. This little map tells AIB everything. It tells them the group they absolutely have to manage carefully is their own employees.
So why bother with all of this? What's the point? Well, it's because it leads to way smarter, more balanced decisions. It forces a company to look beyond the bottom line and actually consider the human impact of what they're doing. And it's absolutely essential for any kind of long-term planning. It helps a business navigate its own complicated ecosystem without accidentally starting a crisis. So the next time you're dealing with any business, think about this ecosystem. Better yet, think of a company you genuinely love, whether it's for their products or for what they stand for. Who do you think they listen to the most? Is it the shareholders, their employees, or is it customers just like you? The answer to that question, it tells you everything you need to know about who really calls the shots.